What happens when cinema stops asking for permission and starts tearing down every rule ever written? The exploitation era of the 60s, 70s, and early 80s unleashed films so unfiltered, so chaotic, that even the censors couldn't keep up. These weren't just movies, they were cinematic riots. Tonight, we dive into 10 shockingly graphic exploitation classics still free to watch, if you dare. 1. The Toxic Avenger, 1984. Before comic book blockbusters took over Hollywood, a very different kind of hero crawled out of a radioactive drum in New Jersey. The Toxic Avenger wasn't born from billion-dollar studios. It was forged in the chaotic basement of trauma entertainment, where budget restraints and pure insanity were the real superpowers. The story follows Melvin Ferd, a timid janitor bullied mercilessly at a health club. But after a cruel prank sends him crashing into a vat of toxic waste, he mutates into a grotesque but unstoppable vigilante who cleans up crime the only way trauma knows, violently, humorously, and without apology. When the film premiered, mainstream critics recoiled. They called it garbage, sleaze, and cinematic pollution. Some theaters rejected it outright. Yet the underground crowd connected instantly. Midnight screenings erupted with roars of laughter and shock. College campuses treated it like a rite of passage. The more critics attacked, the more the cult grew. Behind the scenes, chaos was normal. Stunts were dangerous. Costumes melted. Actors risked burns and bruises. But out of that madness came something unforgettable. A hero who fought bullies, corruption, and the system itself. The Toxic Avenger proved you don't need perfection to be iconic. Sometimes, you just need toxic determination. 2. Coffy, 1973. Before Hollywood talked about strong female leads, Pam Grier embodied one. Coffy wasn't just a film, it was a lightning bolt. Directed by Jack Hill, the story follows a nurse who abandons mercy and embraces vengeance after drug dealers destroy her family. Coffy becomes judge, jury, and executioner, navigating a corrupt world where justice is optional and survival is a fight. Studios were terrified of this movie. Execs claimed it was too violent, too political, too confrontational. Police unions protested its portrayal of corruption. Critics tried to dismiss it as blaxploitation, but audiences saw something far deeper. Coffy wasn't a stereotype. She was a revolution with a pulse, a woman who refused to be powerless in a world built to silence her. Pam Grier performed her own stunts, sprinting through explosions, wrestling criminals, and delivering lines with razor-sharp intensity. Behind the camera, Jack Hill fought censorship daily. Producers wanted Coffy softer, quieter, less dangerous. He refused. When the film hit theaters, crowds poured in. They didn't just watch Coffy, they rooted for her. She represented the anger, hope, and resilience of people ignored by the system. Coffy didn't just break rules, it rewrote them with fire. 3. Faster, Pussycat. Kill! Kill! 1965. In 1965, when cinema was still clinging to clean-cut heroes and Hollywood innocence, Russ Meyer unleashed something wild. Faster, Pussycat, kill, kill! Roared across drive-ins like a cinematic thunderstorm. With leather-clad fury, unforgettable dialogue, and women who refused to apologize for their power, the film shattered expectations and ignited a cultural rebellion. The story follows 3 go-go dancers who tear through the California desert on a violent, adrenaline-pumped rampage. Their leader, Varla, portrayed by the unstoppable Tura Satana, became an icon before the world was ready for her. Strong, dominant, fearless, and unrestrained, Varla crushed every stereotype of what women should be on screen. Censors were furious. Some theaters were raided. Critics called it trash, filth, and a threat to morality. But the underground loved it. Bootleg prints traveled secretly between fans. Midnight screenings turned into events. The more society tried to bury it, the louder it roared back to life. Behind the scenes, Tura Satana performed all her own stunts, fought real bikers during filming, and even survived a near-fatal crash. Her bruises became part of the movie's legend. Decades later, filmmakers like Tarantino and John Waters would hail it as one of exploitation cinema's greatest achievements. a feminist rebellion disguised as chaos. 4. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Few films have ever blurred the line between cinema and crime scene like Cannibal Holocaust. Shot deep in the Amazon rainforest, this found footage nightmare shocked the world in ways even the director didn't anticipate. The story follows a missing documentary crew whose footage reveals their disturbing encounters with indigenous tribes and their own moral collapse. When the film premiered in Italy, police stormed theaters and seized every copy. Rumors spread that the actors had actually been killed on camera. Director Ruggero Deodato was arrested and charged with murder. In court, he had to bring the actors in alive to prove he wasn't a serial killer in disguise. But the controversy went deeper. Animal cruelty, extreme violence, and shockingly realistic effects triggered bans across continents. Nations from Britain to Australia outlawed the movie for decades. Censors labeled it too dangerous to exist. Behind the scenes, the production was chaos. Actors battled disease, heat, insects, and unpredictable conditions. Cameras jammed. Boats nearly sank. Deodato himself almost drowned filming one scene. Yet through all this, a disturbing commentary formed, exposing how Western media exploits suffering for entertainment. Love it or despise it, Cannibal Holocaust remains one of the most infamous films ever made. A haunting mirror held up to humanity's darkest impulses. 5. The Last House on the Left, 1972. Before nightmares had names like Freddy Krueger, Wes Craven crafted something far more unsettling. The Last House on the Left wasn't a typical horror film. It was an emotional ambush. Shot with grainy documentary realism, it followed two teenage girls kidnapped by a sadistic gang. But when the villains unknowingly seek shelter in one girl's home, her parents discover the truth, and the night descends into a brutal cycle of vengeance. The film's tagline warned, "To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie." Audiences should have listened. Screenings were interrupted when viewers collapsed or fled in tears. Certain theaters stopped showings halfway because the reactions were too extreme. Censors across Europe banned the film outright, calling it inhumane and psychologically dangerous. Craven shot the movie guerrilla style, often without permits, risking fines and arrests. The cast performed emotionally grueling scenes, with almost no budget, no safety nets, and no Hollywood polish. What emerged was raw, painful, and disturbingly believable. Years later, critics re-examined the film, recognizing its horrifying message. Violence doesn't redeem, it corrupts. The Last House on the Left became a watershed moment in exploitation cinema, forcing audiences to confront the monsters within themselves. 6. Thriller, A Cruel Picture, 1973. Sweden was the last place anyone expected to produce one of the most brutal revenge films ever made. Yet Thriller, A Cruel Picture emerged like a silent scream from beneath the snow. Directed by Bo Arne Vibenius, it follows Madeline, a young mute woman kidnapped, drugged, and forced into exploitation, only to transform herself into a relentless, calculating assassin. Unlike other revenge films of its era, Thriller is cold, methodical, and eerily quiet. It shows vengeance, not as explosive rage, but as a chilling, precise ritual. Scandinavian authorities reacted instantly. The film was banned, censored, and seized. Newspapers refused to print ads. Critics called it national shame, but the underground world embraced it with wide-open arms. Bootlegs circulated across Europe and eventually reached American grindhouses, where it was retitled, They Call Her One Eye. That iconic eye patch later inspired Tarantino's Elle Driver in Kill Bill. Behind the scenes, 20-year-old Christina Lindbergh trained in martial arts, stunt driving, and gun handling. Filming was intense, with Vibenius demanding military-level discipline. Storms, equipment failures, and government pressure only hardened the film's identity. Thriller remains a haunting relic, a revenge tale that doesn't scream but whispers, and somehow cuts even deeper. 7. Miss 45, 1981. New York City in the early 1980s was a battlefield. Crumbling buildings, rising crime, and a constant sense of danger thick in the air. Out of that chaos came Miss 45, Abel Ferrara's raw, psychological revenge masterpiece. It follows Thana, a mute seamstress whose life collapses after two brutal assaults in one day. Broken but unyielding, she begins hunting predators in the city's darkest corners, becoming both savior and monster. The film was too much for many. Religious groups protested, labeling it blasphemous. Police unions accused it of glorifying violence against men. Critics were split. Some saw exploitation, others genius. Yet underground audiences understood immediately. Ms. 45 was a portrait of trauma carved with cinematic honesty. Zoe Lund's performance is unforgettable. She wasn't just acting. She embodied Thana's silent fury. Lund contributed to the script, shaped her character's psychology, and even influenced the tone of Ferrara's future films. Many extras in the movie were real New Yorkers who unknowingly wandered into shots, giving the film a gritty authenticity impossible to replicate today. Dark, tragic, and mesmerizing, Ms. 45 grew from a cult secret into a feminist noir legend. Its final act remains one of exploitation cinema's most chilling climaxes. 8. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975. Controversial, banned, and fiercely debated, Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, remains one of the most notorious exploitation films ever created. Set in a Nazi prison camp and starring Diane Thorne as the sadistic warden Ilsa, the film delivers a shocking mix of brutality, domination, and rebellion. It was marketed as a revenge fantasy, but what viewers witnessed was far darker, a nightmarish portrait of unchecked authority. The film was shot on the leftover sets of Hogan's Heroes, converting sitcom scenery into a hellish prison. Governments reacted instantly. Canada seized prints at the border. Britain banned it under their infamous video nasties list. Newspapers called it cinematic poison. But underground fans couldn't look away. Midnight screenings sold out. Bootleg VHS tapes crossed borders like contraband. Behind the scenes, the production was chaotic. Temperatures soared over 100 degrees. Actor injuries were common. Thorne struggled emotionally with the extreme content and nearly quit. Director Don Edmonds rewrote scenes on the spot, pushing the cast to their limits. Despite, or because of its controversy, Ilsa became a cult icon. It spawned sequels set everywhere, from deserts to harems. Today, it stands as a dark reminder of how easily power can twist into horror, and how exploitation cinema often mirrors real-world cruelty. 9. The Big Dollhouse, 1971. When American audiences thought they had seen the limits of shock cinema, The Big Dollhouse kicked the doors wide open. Directed by Jack Hill and filmed deep in the tropical jungles of the Philippines, it redefined the women in prison genre with a mix of rebellion, brutality, and unexpected empowerment. The film follows a group of female inmates plotting their escape from a corrupt prison ruled by sadistic guards and a ruthless warden. Censors across the US and Europe immediately targeted the film. Britain labeled it indecent. Several states demanded severe cuts. But audiences didn't care. Drive-in theaters filled with crowds hungry for something raw, chaotic, and different. The film's blend of violence, humor, and political subtext made it stand out from the pack. Behind the scenes, real jungle conditions pushed the cast and crew to their limits. Leeches, monsoon storms, and tropical heat created constant danger. Pam Grier, still early in her career, nearly quit after collapsing from exhaustion, but her performance ended up launching her into stardom. The Big Dollhouse wasn't just exploitation. It was revolution wrapped in pulp, a film that whispered a dangerous truth. Even in chains, rebellion is always waiting to ignite. 10. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. Few films have triggered as much outrage, fear, and whispered curiosity as I Spit on Your Grave. Released originally as Day of the Woman, the film follows Jennifer, a young writer seeking quiet inspiration in a small lakeside town, but instead encountering horrific violence. What follows is one of the most uncompromising revenge arcs ever put on screen. No music, no softening, no Hollywood gloss, just raw, suffocating tension. When it debuted, critics stormed out. Some fainted. One reviewer demanded the director be arrested. Britain banned it for decades, calling it the most vile film ever made. Australia outlawed it. American theaters refused screenings unless entire sequences were removed. Yet despite the censorship, underground audiences sought it out. VHS bootlegs became forbidden currency among horror fans who dared each other to finish it. Actress Camille Keaton described filming as emotionally brutal, an experience that left psychological scars but also deep artistic pride. Director Mir Zarchi insisted the film was not exploitation, but a grim reflection of real violence he once witnessed. Today, the film is recognized not as a celebration of cruelty, but as an indictment of it, a rage-filled mirror held up to society's darkest truths. These films weren't made to comfort you. They were made to shake you awake, banned, buried, and nearly erased, yet still alive, because rebellion never dies. Now tell me, which one shocked you the most? And which one are you brave enough to watch first? Drop your answer below. I'm reading all your comments. Before you go, like the video, subscribe for more forbidden cinema, and watch the next one. It gets even wilder.